Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the High Ticket Coaching and Consultant Strategy and Growth Show. Now, if you're watching this interview anywhere else but within our private Facebook community called High Ticket Client Attraction Insider Circle, then definitely come check us out. We'd definitely love to have you. That community was put together specifically for coaches, consultants, and service providers who are serious about getting up to that 6 and that 7-figure level. So if that's you. Definitely come check us out. Now, today I want to introduce you to one of the members of our community, Alison Donaghey. Welcome, Alison.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. It's great having you on here. So tell
Thanks.
us, what is it that you do?
One of the things that I do is really help people understand where their worth is coming from, because I found that people have forgotten that they have value. Like when we are born, we're miraculous, and I help people remember that they're miraculous. This isn't about creating something that doesn't already exist inside of you. It's really about tapping back into that miracle that you are. We never look at a baby and go, yeah, no, not a miracle. And right. But then the world tells us we're not good enough. And we're constantly then trying to get value from outside of ourselves. And that just has a negative impact on everything. So I help people understand how to get there.
Yeah. And what got you into this type of work?
Other people, actually. I've been through some experiences, and I gave a speech one time talking about a traumatic experience that I had, and people said, well, how did you get through that? And I said, well, I had to really understand how I was co-creating my circumstances, because it is a dance. Like what you and I are doing right now is a dance, and it can either go down in a really healthy way, or it can go down in a really manipulative way where I'm trying to convert you or change your mind about something so that I can get value. And so as people started talking to me about it, I realized there was this gap between where our worth comes from and where it should come from. Mm-hmm. And so then people started asking me to work with them about it, and then I did, and then I offered a course, and it snowballs.
Yeah. So was that, you said you went through a traumatic experience. Do you mind, are you comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, totally. I was raped in high school, and it wasn't until I understood how I co-created it, and without the shame and the blame or any of that stuff. I really had to take the emotion out of it and understand the construction of what happened. And the construction was that I went out with somebody that, well, first of all, I went to a place I didn't want to go to. And then I went out with a guy, I agreed to go out with a guy I didn't like and didn't want to go out with, because I had no value. I had no understanding of my worth. And I thought if I could hang out with somebody more popular and really good looking, I would then by default have value. And so when I started looking at the series of choices that I made that led me down that path, I was then able to adjust the way I think so that going forward, I'm not making those sort of damaging choices.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, so that's kind of how, would you say that kept you stuck in any way as far as that process? How did it evolve for you?
I would say I was probably stuck in that victim mentality for about 15 years. And everything in my life reflected that lack of self-worth. And as I started to see the patterns evolving and started to make the changes, I was able to step out of that. And then as people were asking me, well, how did you do that? How did you turn your life around? How did you go from living with a drug addict and a single mom on welfare to creating a business? I started understanding what that path looked like. And then I was able to break it down to its smaller pieces to help people understand how they could do it themselves.
Mm. And what does that path look like?
Oh, well, it's this particular program that I offer. It's an 8-week program. And what it does is it helps people really understand this concept of worth. And where do we get it from? And what is that pay value? I do have a quicker free method that people can start with. It's called the Brave Method. And it's free on my website, and it's just a download, and it helps people understand how, when we are in a reaction mode, how we can pause and instead of reacting, come from a place where we understand our worth.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. And what would you say excites you about the work that you do?
Oh, I love it that people haven't thought of things this way. That is like when people take my program, people just say, I didn't even know this was a thing. I didn't even know I was manipulating people in my life. I didn't even know that I was damaging my relationships. And my husband wanted to leave me. I didn't know it was that bad. And when they can start taking ownership of the choices that they're making and the part that they play in their life, it is such an empowering process to watch. It's so cool.
Yeah, awesome. And I know a lot of the listeners on the show, they're at the place where, because the bulk of the audiences are coaches, consultants, service providers, and most of them come from a frame of they've been through something in their life, they've experienced something, and they've overcome it, and
Mm-hmm.
now they're wondering whether they can get paid, they can build a business around what they've kind of overcome in their life. So how did you always know that you could build a business out of helping others with solving this problem you overcame yourself, or was it something you kind of stumbled upon? How did you come to that realization?
Well, I have a local business as well. That's a house painting company. And that's the business that got me off welfare. And so sort of when you start one business, you become an entrepreneur. And so starting another business is just part of your language. It's been a very different journey, but absolutely. I think and I wrote a business book as well. And when we get really clear on what we're doing, like, and why we're doing it, as opposed to something else. Like if you make coffee, is there a reason why you're a barista at Starbucks as opposed to Tim Hortons or Krispy Kreme or McDonald's or whatever? There is certain personality types, certain things we need out of a situation, certain ways we value ourselves that put us in these places. And when we can start understanding why we are doing what we're doing, what those deep motivations are. So can I talk about the little exercise I give people around business?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we have time for that. So I have this process called What's the Worst? And so if you are sitting in a restaurant and you overhear somebody talking about you and your business or your business to be, what is the worst thing that you could hear somebody say? So for example, with my painting company, if somebody said, oh, Alison's not really the best painter in town, I met somebody who's even better than her, I'd go, ouch, that kind of hurt my feelings. But it wouldn't devastate me. But if somebody said you don't provide value for what you do, I would be devastated. And so I would have to get up, I'd have to go over, I'd have to have a conversation and figure out how I could fix it, because that is such a core value for me. And when people can understand what that core value is, they can start putting that in every part of their business. And then you're attracting people that are attracted to that core value. And it just changes the way you do business.
Mm-hmm. Awesome,
Mm-hmm.
awesome. So you're ultimately saying I'm the best place to lead with in business. If you're going to communicate, if you're going to do anything, it's leading from that core value, whatever
For
is that
sure.
core thing for you.
Yeah, and then all of your policies are built around this core value. So every time I implement a new policy, it has to give so much value or I won't do it.
Mm-hmm.
When I have conversations with people, if I'm not bringing value to it, I won't have the conversation.
Yeah.
So I check in with myself all the time. Like when you asked if I could be a guest here, or we've reached out to each other, I had to really look at your stuff and see if what I could talk about here would give value.
Mm-hmm.
And I have said no in certain situations because I don't feel I can based on their platform.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it helps us stay in our lane. It really does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so
Mm-hmm.
powerful as well too, because so many individuals, I know most of the audience as well too, it's how they make money, how they thrive is through getting actual paying clients, right? And most of them, they're just trying to figure out, okay, what's the quickest, shortest path to get a paying client? And it's typically it evolves, like whether it's direct messaging people or like trying to cold call it and all these different things. Versus I find the best way is you got to be about something, right? You got to stand for something. And once you figure out those values, what you stand for, then just showing up. The next thing is just showing up on social media and just sharing it. Because once you do
Mm-hmm.
that, that's really attract people, right?
Absolutely. Otherwise, you're trying to jump through other people's hoops. Oh, that person needs me to say this, so I'll have to say it this way. And that person over there wants to hear about this, so I'll say this way. It's so interesting because my son is taking over my painting company as I am doing more work around this worthiness part. And his reasons for doing what he's doing is very different than mine. And so it's bridging this gap between my need to have this company give value and for what his needs are. And so it's just been this really interesting journey because we're all different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what's one skill you'd say that's gotten you to where you're at today with your level of success in your business?
I would have to say, be really curious and ask questions, because, and this requires you to set aside your own opinion in order to do that. And I have been through periods of my life, I'm not going to lie, where I have been extremely opinionated, and it makes it very difficult for me to hear somebody else. But always get curious. Ask those people who are doing better than you what works, what doesn't. And if it aligns with what your core value is, then start implementing it. But get really, really, really curious. Ask lots of questions.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's so fascinating. Questions are one of the places where when you ask them, they're what they open up so many doors, right? Because I believe so many times individuals, they approach conversations and they're like not approaching to ask questions, they're more approaching them to, okay, based on what they're saying, how do I kind of strategically start positioning what I need to say, right? Versus
Mm-hmm.
actually hearing out that person and seeing what that person is really trying to share with us. Because 9 times out of 10, it's whatever they're trying to share, it's something that's in some way could help us figure out what we need to figure out, right?
Absolutely. And people really enjoy being heard. So when we ask a genuine, interested question to somebody, they feel good that you're listening to what that answer is, and they will remember you as a result of that. So you don't have to do all this flashy stuff over here. You just genuinely have to be interested in this person that's in front of you, and they will remember you.
Yeah, love it, love
Yeah.
it. What about have you had any big breakthroughs? I always like asking the question, like because I know for me as I go on my journey, I'm always having these big breakthroughs, these big insights. I'm like, man, this is some really cool stuff. Over the past few days, weeks, have you had any big insights, big breakthroughs that you believe that if you shared, someone could really use and get some awesome results or something?
Yeah, I think I have really let go of this idea that there is truth out there,
Mm-hmm.
that there are just versions of things, and we have to keep digging. There's always that other layer. And with all of the stuff that's going on in the news and all of the stuff that's happening, if I come from a place that none of it's true, then I don't have to get attached to any sort of outcome. I don't have to be married to my approach. I don't have to be married to my own beliefs, my thoughts, my feelings about things. Because if none of it's really true, the freedom that lives in that is just so amazing. I don't have to have conflict with people if none of it's true. I can just hear these different points of view and be neutral about it.
Yeah, and I think that's the most powerful stance to take in life and business and anywhere, right? The perspective of like being able to see what's happening, but not attached to it so much. Being able to see other people, like seeing how this person is like so solid in their way of thinking, and then this other person is so solid, but how they just, it's always like an impasse, right? To where it's like, what's happening? Like, why can't you see, like, it's really, as you said, it's not really true. It's really not true. It could be either or. And
Right.
it's much better to have the perspective of it could be, but it also couldn't be, and come from those places. Because I believe that
Mm-hmm.
that's really what life is. I believe life, success in life and business, it's more of those individuals who are able to adapt to certain things, right? To some individuals who say it could be this way today, but tomorrow it'll also be different, and they could entertain those two perspectives, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like the going through that, what if I'm wrong? What if I don't have all the information? And there's been some things that have happened during COVID that I've had to step back and go, whoa, I thought I kind of knew where I sat in this position. And maybe I don't. Maybe I just needed more information. And maybe next week I will get more information and I will feel differently about it again, which is different than being flaky. Right? Being flaky means you're just jumping on whatever bandwagon is out there. But being curious and staying neutral is actually a really powerful place to live.
Yeah, awesome,
Mm-hmm.
awesome. What
Yeah.
about books wise? Are you a reader? Are you podcasts? What how do you consume information?
Well, I have a podcast, so I do enjoy listening to them. And I love audiobooks because I do spend a lot of time traveling and in vehicles and that. And I just finished reading, oh my goodness, what's it called? It was a Malcolm Gladwell, Talking to Strangers.
Hmm.
And have you read that one?
No, I haven't.
Ugh, I just thought it was just such a cool way of seeing things from a different perspective. And I love everything he puts out anyway. I'm a big fan. But yeah, I would have to say audiobooks are really up there as a way to just start taking in information, especially since I get to listen to them at like double speed. I really like that.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
So the Malcolm Gladwell book, what's the big takeaway that you've gotten so far?
That the way that we judge people by our initial interactions is just so flawed, right? We think that if I'm talking to you and you act a certain way, I know something about you. And the reality is that we just don't. And that you may show up in a situation different than I expect you to show up in a situation. And that doesn't mean anything. It's I still have to take that time to get to know that person in front of me and their experiences that have led them down that path where they believe what it is that they believe.
Yeah, so powerful. It's so quick. It's so interesting how quickly we are to just judge everything on surface value, right? But I guess
Yeah.
it's one of those human biases, which is, again, you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but we still do anyways. But
Mm-hmm.
then you start realizing that a human being, a person, and it's always, I think, what's his name? Stephen Covey. He told the story of being on a bus or something. Um, and imagine being on the bus and there's you're sitting next to this stranger and you're like, it's been a long night, you've been tired, and you're on this bus trying to get some sleep. And then there's a stranger next to you with this crying baby, and the baby's just crying, and the parent is just sitting there like all depressed, like not trying to calm the baby, not saying, hey, be quiet, or there's other people here. The parent is just like not even paying attention. And the baby's like screaming just at the top of his lungs, and oh my god, what's, and you're here trying to get some sleep, and your first initial reaction is like, would somebody please tell this baby to be quiet? What
That
do you
might be a normal
think?
reaction.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. And you're just like, oh, but then you talk to a parent, and you turn to a parent and you said, can you please tell your baby to stop? And the parent's like, oh, I'm really sorry. We just got back from the hospital and his mother just died, and he's just not sure how to process his information right now. And all of a sudden your perspective goes from, whoa, and to where you're now totally different shift, which is now you want to try to say, what can I do to kind of support this person? What can I do to help
Mm.
the child? Because the situation just changed, right? You got new information. And I find that it's so, like with people, it's the same exact thing, to where when we judge them on the surface, we feel like we know exactly what's going on, but it's not until we take the time to figure out who they are, what they've been through, all these different things, then all of a sudden we now get a totally different perspective on who this person is and why they are the way they are and why they do what they do. And most people, they never take the time to get that deep with any individual, right?
Oh, for sure. And that can even extend further into experiences, circumstances that we have. So we're driving down the road and somebody's tailgating us, and we make up this story about who that person must be. And they're never good people. They're always bad people. But we could choose to make a story up that makes them look good. Maybe they're trying to get to the hospital to see their mother who just fell down and broke a hip. And they're actually trying to be a good child,
Mm-hmm.
and, or, son or daughter. But we don't choose that first. We choose, who's this jerk think he is trying to tailgate me? And so I love that example of the baby on the bus as well. I will definitely use that.
Love it, love it.
Mm-hmm.
So what you said, you had a podcast. What's the name of your show?
It's called Domino Thinking with Alison.
What's the theme? What's it about?
A couple of different things. One, I bring on guests who have either moved from a victim state to a freedom state. They've gone through a traumatic experience and they've worked their way through it to come out the other side and see the silver lining in what that experience was.
Mm-hmm.
And other people that I bring on just either have a controversial point of view or just shedding light on a situation in a different way. Like I had a woman come on talking about human trafficking, and I expected, in my expectation, because we all have them, that she would be talking about traveling and how you have to be careful so that you don't get kidnapped and trafficked. And I wasn't expecting her to talk about how rampant it is in our high schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is just so interesting hearing people talk about things, and it really allows me to suspend my belief, and hopefully my listeners as well.
Yeah, love it, love it. Awesome. Now, if someone wanted to reach out, what's the best way for them to connect?
Easiest is dominothinking.com. That's my website. So everything's on there. So the free 5-step brave process is on there. People can access that. And my podcast, email, all of it is all nice in one place.
Yeah, awesome. And guys, to connect with Alison, I'll definitely have her links that shoot back to her right either above or below this video. So if you want to get connected, if this message resonates with you, just click through and get connected with her. Well, Alison, hey, thank you so much for making the time to be here today. Really appreciate it. Do you have any final thoughts before we end?
I just want people who are listening to just know that you have value. Like there's so much inherent worth in who you are. And if you can start owning that and stepping into that, it will just change your outlook and your relationships with your clients and your partners and yourself. And you're worthy. And I want you to know that.
Awesome. Love it. Well, hey, thanks again for stopping by. Thank you so much for sharing, and we'll talk soon. Okay.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.